This is what a game selling looked like in 2017. Thanks to luck and thanks to Fanasoft's kind help, we made $53,000 in today dollars in our first year. And that's solid money. That's a middle-class income. For a grad student, that's amazing. And so I'm like, okay, this is for real. And the best thing about it, I think one of the great miracles of being an indie creator in any field is that I owned my work. When you make a video game, you've made a miracle. You've made a machine that prints money. Normally when you make a machine that prints money, it's a felony and they send you to jail. But here, they let you get away with it. And even if that machine isn't making money right now, you wait 5 years, you're remastered. It might start, put some more ink in it. It might start kicking out money then. There has not hardly been a day gone by since I released Exile that I have not made money off of it. And owning your work is one of the greatest things in the world. And even back then, I knew if I wanted to try and make a go of it, my whole story was going to be about two things: making a back catalog and getting myself some fans. So at this point, my grad school performance is pretty much non-existent. So I take a master's and I get the heck out. I port Exile to Windows, writing games on Windows 3.1. The less said about that, the better. It took me 3 days to draw one 256 color icon onto a screen. I put that demo on America Online. That sells too. Great. So now I need to write another game. What am I going to do? Well, it's the computer game industry. I take the name of my previous game and I put a 2 after it. About this time, now everyone in this business is familiar with the phenomenon where your game sells great and then the sales suddenly drop by 90%. These days, in this enlightened accelerated time, that usually takes about 3 days. Back then, it took me a few months. But not long after I decided to go full time, my sales just immediately fall into the toilet and I felt like I was going to die. I took that limitless terror and funneled that energy into working onto Exile 2 harder. Now, at this point, now I'm making a new game, all of a sudden the pattern for how I like to do things starts to be clear. I like a small company. I like to work alone. I keep doing that. Most of my code is functional, so I keep reusing it. I reuse most of my assets, most of my graphics, most of my sounds. I am merciless about reusing assets. I have used the same wolf icon in like 15 different games. If it's a decent icon, it looks like a wolf. The next game, it's still going to look like a wolf. People make fun of me for it all the time, but I'm also still in business. Whenever I release a new game, I look for the 25% of it that's the worst, and I redo that. I am the leanest and the meanest of developers. And again, this is all part of finding my creative process. People make fun of me for it all the time, but it's just the way I work. And if you're not like that, if you need bespoke art and if you need custom music, if that's your process, then go with it. You know, you have to earn more sales to make up for it, but if that's what you need to do to feel happy with your life in this business, that's what you got to do. But if you find a thing where you feel that it's okay to be cheap, do not let anyone shame you out of being cheap. Finish Exile 2. It takes a little over a year. It's like Exile, but a tiny bit better. So it's still selling. I have to write. Well, my last game had a 2 after the name, so I decided, it's the video game industry, I changed the 2 to a 3. Now, by this time, I have pretty much entirely strip-mined my childhood of good ideas, so I evolve my design process. Instead of just stealing ideas from the games from when I was young, I look at the games that came out in the previous 3 years, and I steal the best single idea from every one of those. Again, innovation is great, and it is one of the greatest strengths of being an indie. But another of the greatest strengths of being an indie is that we have the ability to pick up the genres that are too small for AAA people to take advantage of: puzzle games, roguelikes, adventure games, and exploit those. And because there's so many games, there aren't that many underutilized genres, but a new genre re-becomes underutilized every year. It's 1997. The web exists. So I code this utterly gorgeous website. It's on spiderwebsoftware.com still. It's not on spiderweb.com because someone has been swatting on that URL for the last 25 continuous years. We decide to go independent. We break from Fanasoft and we start doing everything ourselves. To do this, convincingly, I have to gain the ability to take credit cards. Now, at this time, no bank will trust me because nobody seriously believes it is possible to make a living, make money on the internet. They think I'm going to collect a bunch of credit cards and then fly off to Honduras or whatever. So I beg bank after bank after bank, look, I'm a real business. I'm making real money. I need to be able to take credit cards. And finally, one bank, to prove that I'm not a con artist, they asked me for a printout of my website. So I print out my website, I hand it to them, they look at me like I'm a wizard, and then they sent me a credit card swipe machine to go in my apartment, so to order, people call me on the phone, and I type the number in with my finger. We program our own online store, we host our own demos, we handle our own file handling, we do all our own security, we do all
to some very important jobs, things like air traffic control.
All of the own horrible stuff that services like iTunes and Steam make frictionless. And you know, I just have to say, sometimes take a moment to appreciate how amazing everything is. Like, I hear indies complain all the time about the cut that Apple and Steam take. But all of the stuff that Steam does for you and makes easy, I've had to do myself, support myself, a la carte. I've hired full-time employees to do the stuff that Steam does. I know how much it costs. And more importantly, they do too. So if you want to be mad at Steam, fine, but bear in mind that that percentage is not going to shift. We finish Exile 3. It's big. It actually contains some innovation in addition to the theft. There's still not a lot of role-playing games out. It's exactly the right game at the right time, and it's a big hit. Now, I say that I had a shareware hit. Now, these days, when you have a hit, that means that you get to build a mansion out of yachts. In 1997, having a hit was something less different. My first year sales from Exile 3 was in today dollars, $330,000. And that's, don't get me wrong, that's serious money. That's life-changing money. That's, you have a game that sells like that, you're going to be eating out on that game for the rest of your life. That's as, I'm going to be in this business for a long time money. But it's not, it's still, I have to work for a living money. And by the way, before I leave this slide, I beg you, please support bigcatclipart.com and the good work they do. My radiant wife, Marianne, who is the wind beneath my wings, has a job that she hates, so she quits her job and comes on board with me, and since then we've been writing Spiderweb software together. She is my business manager and keeps every single thing running. At this point, we're doing all our own everything ourselves. Most of our orders come in over the phone, and we talk to humans. People talk a lot about how on the internet the anonymity makes it easier for people to be mean to each other. But anyone who has done phone customer service, I assure you, people have no problem being utterly inhuman to you when they're talking to you like a person. This is a key lesson for anyone who runs a small business or deals in a creative way. It is a human constant that a certain number of people, let's say 10%, no matter what the demographic, if you're talking about people who are left-handed, people with red hair, people who are gamers, people who wear mismatched socks, a certain percentage of those people are always going to be mean. A certain percentage of those people are always going to be cranks, and there's nothing you can do about it. And when you're building your business world and your mind environment, you have to take that into account. And you should remember that often the people who are angriest at you are not going to be completely anonymous. They're going to be the people who 5 years ago were your most devout fans. And then you changed a thing, and it was their favorite thing, and they don't like you anymore. Just remember, there is always a very thin line between love and hate. And so if you're gonna make it for your 40 years, shelter your brain. If there is a sort of input that puts me off my feet and slows down my work, I have to be working at top efficiency to keep this ball rolling. If something is keeping me from working, I cut it out mercilessly. I have no idea what my Steam reviews are. None. I never go on my forums unless I absolutely have to. If a new game is out, I have to look on it, see if there's any bugs. I look at my forums. But otherwise, I never look at forums. I'm on Twitter, but if people start being mean to me on Twitter, I quit. And then I go back on when the coast is clear. And let me be clear. I'm a white guy, so I get less abuse. I'll be straightforward about that. Bear in mind, I still get abuse. I have gotten some input from out in the wild that has utterly and legitimately terrified me. But other people will get more abuse than I am because of who they are. It is not fair. It is one of many unfair things that you are going to run into in this business. But no matter what happens, once again, there's going to be cranks and you can't do anything. So you have to shelter your brain because in the end, the first order of business is your work and producing it. And one more side note, don't be afraid to fire a customer. They say that the customer is always right. That's not true. Customers are wrong all the time. But the truth is nobody ever won an argument with a customer. There are times when you're going to have to say to someone, look, my thing isn't for you. I can't add that feature. I can't write that expansion. I just can't do the thing you want. Offer them a refund and send them on their way. If someone is on the forums and you can see that they're just there to cause trouble, ban them. If people are making a noise, that person who is screwing up your business, you shouldn't have banned them. Ban them too. The beatings will continue until morale improves. Daddy is home. If you're on your forums and someone is just there to make trouble, you can tell. And some of them are good about it. They'll just push right up to the line and push back. Push right up to the line and push back. People who are nice and who support you will understand. About this time, I also start, trying to help other shareware people do what I do. I create this website, which is still up. It is hilariously out of date. It's like 20 years old. But I've always written talks, given articles, done everything I could to help shareware developers because I believe in it. I really do. So in a very short period of time, we go from not believing it is possible to make money on the internet to believing you can only make money on the internet. And even at the time, it was fully obvious that this was ridiculous. Basically, people would just make tech companies. They try to grow really, really fast. Even though the company was obviously doomed, they try to get enough interest in it to get in a whole bunch of IPO and investor money, cash out, move to a different continent, and then the whole thing exploded, which of course it did, as it had to. Fortunately, we live in a much more enlightened time now, and we can be assured that that will never happen again. The bubble was a big help for us. Everyone and their cousin was making a video game website because they thought there was money in that, and we had a lot of free PR from it. They sent out shareware CDs. We got on a lot of them. Between having a successful game and sort of splash onto us from the internet boom, we had to ask ourselves, now what? What's our business going to do? What's it going to be like? Because we could get investors. We could build a real business. I could make games that my parents aren't ashamed of. What am I going to do? We could build something really big. We thought about it, we had some conversations, and we basically did nothing. We hired one full-time employee to do for us all the stuff that Steam does for us now so that we could go to Disney World sometimes. That's pretty much all we changed. And just to be clear, we have no regrets. And if you want to build a big, real company, if you want to be a Viking, my God, go for it. You have nothing but my admiration. If that's the way you need to be to live in this business, do that. But me, I'm a humble toy maker. I sit in my garage and I make little toys for all the happy boys and girls. That's my life. That is what I do. That is what I'm always going to do. Live or die. That's my bag. And just one more fun aside. There was so many games magazines that for a short time it was very, very good money to write about video games. I had days where it's like, oh God, I want to work on this game, but I have to write game criticism because it makes so much money. Oh, it feels good to laugh. Of course, that ended, and yet someday it may return. When enough people in a field go out of business, and the demand for some reason increases, you get a growth period in the business cycle. You just have to be lucky enough and ready enough to catch it when it comes. So over the next 4 years, we write more games. we write Blades of Exile, which is Exile, but with this really dumb, obvious scenario creation system that's simple enough that anybody can use it. And we get piles and piles of scenarios for it. It's still popular. We open sourced it. I decided to write a new IP. I write a game called Nethergate, which is something almost like innovation. It's a historical role-playing game with Celts versus Romans in ancient Britain. I read actual books. And so this is what it looks like. And usually I switch my graphics around. I'm trying to get a little bit more like productive values. It had a really innovative story structure where it's one story, but you can play two different sides and see it from both sides. It kind of seemed like an educational game, which is death. But it sold okay. And I was getting really sick at this point of everyone telling me, your graphics suck, your graphics suck, your graphics suck. So I spend some actual money, I hire actual artists, and get graphics that are somewhere in the same continent as the standard for graphics at the time. The result, of course, was that every day people told me, your graphics suck, your graphics suck, your graphics suck. That was the last time I ever made the mistake of making an effort. It's really important to note in indie games that pretty much every game is going to be someone's favorite game. Your goal is to make a game that is enough people's favorite game to keep you in food and shelter. And this is why you should always be very scared of someone asking for more curation on a platform. Because one person or one panel of people can never, ever predict in the end what the market is going to like. The only thing that can decide what the market will like is the market. We'd been in this for a few years. Our games were selling consistently. We had a real fan base. We had role-playing games are an evergreen niche, and we served it well. Everything seemed to be just cruising along fine. So that's when we almost went out of business. Suspense. Our next series was the GeneForge series, which I'm enormously proud of and is next in line for a really nice remastering. The GeneForge games were actually innovative. It was a sci-fi fantasy hybrid. There's no bad guys in GeneForge. There's just factions that you choose between. The gameplay is very open-ended. You can play an entirely pacifist character, get through the whole thing with trickery and never do a fight. At this point, the Exile games are embarrassingly old, so we start remastering them as Avernum games. And once again, those sell great. We hum along for another 6 years. We do 2 GeneForge games. We do 2 remasters. We have fans. Every year in November, we do a sale, 10% off. Can you imagine? That always does really well. Around this time, we're making in the 200,000s a year for 3 full-time employees. And that's most of the time that's around what we make. And that was pretty solid. So, 2007, we've been doing this for about 13 years. I remastered Blades of Exile as Blades of Avernum. It has a really powerful scripting engine people can use to make scenarios. It takes forever to write it, and it was just too complicated. People weren't really as into making adventures with it. I write GeneForge 3, and quite frankly, I was lazy. It's been a long time I was complacent, and I slacked off, and I made a game that was just too similar to the 2 previous games. They just didn't do that well. They went down a bunch. And I'll just show you numbers to show what, for us, almost going out of business means. 2003, we make almost $300,000 in today dollars. The next year, it's down by over a quarter. And again, 3 full-time employees. We have a ton of expenses doing the things that Steam does. Sending me money. Now, how did these?
My J job yet, so I got that going for me.
Yeah, we're gonna the tenacity of the cockroach. Then you will eventually make it. Maybe making a living as an artist is hard. It's always been hard. It always will be hard. And I want to say reassuring things, but I'm too fundamentally honest to not. I have to tell the truth. It's possible, but it's rough. And people ask all the time, do you think I have what it takes to make it? What do I need to do to make it? And my favorite quote about this comes from noted stand-up comedian and banjo enthusiast Steve Martin. You should always try to write games that pass the P test. You want to write a game that's so compelling that people forget to P. If you let people test your game and you tell them you can't play it anymore, you should always be shooting. There should always be one person out of your testers, one weirdo who's grabbing you by the lapels and going, I got to keep playing this game. That is the goal, and it's hard. My God, I know it's hard. And that's why you can't quit your day job. You have to have until you have some confidence, until you're sure. And again, this is a process thing. Some people will prove me wrong, but I really believe unless you're absolutely sure, don't quit your day job until you've got the game that you're going, this is it. This game is addictive. I will bet my life on it, because you kind of are. So I just want to end with a couple inspirational words, just because I am fundamentally cheery. In all of the havoc and all of the terror, please occasionally take a moment to be proud. People who do what we do, people who are artists and musicians and whatnot, are carrying on a tradition that is as old as humanity. The compulsion, when you see a blank canvas, a compulsion to fill that canvas with something, to take all of the weird stuff in your brain and go, "Blah," and hope that it lands on someone and makes their life better. What we do is a noble thing. And I ask you, it's a rough road ahead, but I ask you to not forget it and to be proud. I will be taking questions for a short time.
If you've got a question for Jeff, please come line up at the mic.
While people are coming up, I will say, if you follow my Twitter, you've already seen this. I was looking in my desk drawer, and I found that this is a 3.5-inch floppy disk on it that says, "In case of emergency." I found it in my drawer where it's been sitting for about 15 years. And at some point about 15 years ago, I remember making this disk. I remember thinking, this thing, if I'm ever in trouble, I have to have this or everything's going to explode. And I copied something on a disk and put it in a drawer. I have no idea what's on here. All I know is I can never get rid of this. I can never ever get rid of this thing. I'm gonna be buried with this.
Main issues:
in my
sky-high
coffin,
rate of
my head's
violence,
gonna be on it like a pillow.
more people living below the poverty line
You know,
than anywhere
it might be a
else.
Linux reboot disk. Oh yeah, like I'm gonna take extra effort to keep running Linux. Okay, there's your hot take. Oh sure.
So what was the degree you were working on? What was the Jeff that we missed out on because of
I was at Rutgers University in beautiful central New Jersey working on a PhD in applied mathematics because the world needs much more of that. And yeah, I just couldn't stand it. The whole point of grad school is to make your life so miserable that it forces you to decide to do something proper.
Hi, I know who you are because I am working on my first indie RPG, and I've looked at you and said that, well, theoretically it's possible.
Oh, sure.
I have not quit my J job yet, so I got that going for me.
Yeah, working on a game late at night. That is the artist's tradition.
So my question is that maybe this is too personal for you to answer, but I'm a one-man shop right now.
Okay.
I have lots of programming and design experience. The art is where I'm kind of struggling, and so I'm at the point where I'm actually trying to ask the question is how do I move forward with that? Do I go with a very cheap indie look, like some of your early games, or do I start investing in people to start making art for me in a more professional level? And I guess I was wondering what your insight of when to know when to advance that.
So I'm trying to bring up this slide because this is the okay. Well, it's kind of visible.
Yeah.
So there's tons of free resources online. My mind is just shattered by the depth and the quality of resources you can license online for free or very reasonably priced. So be merciless. Real artists ship. Find what it takes to get your thing off the launch pad and download that. And of course, it's going to come up to your creativity and a skill as a craftsman. You're going to have to, you go on opengameart.com, you're going to see 500 million icons. You have to pick out the ones that work together in a cohesive whole. You're probably going to get to the point where it gets you 90% of the way there, and there's some things that you can only properly do with bespoke art. And when that happens, then you got to find a real artist, and you got to pay out some money. And that's still my process. When I'm designing a game, I look at all of my resources, my own back catalog of art. I look at the art that's free online that is of quality, and I say, okay, what can I make for cheap? But what do I gotta pay a person for? So My advice, make cruddy programmer, download stuff from sites, make cruddy programmer art for the rest, make a game, make it functional, and then show it to people and play them and ask yourself, do I got a live one here? And if you do, then it's time to deal with the whole other topic / universe of pain that is finding and dealing with freelancers. But that's the best advice I can give.
I guess just a real quick follow-up, like, if it's not all about money, when do you know, like, when it's time to, like, maybe, like, advance your own skills and, like, work on your art skills to be, like, more full-featured as opposed to...
Depends on who you are.
Yeah.
I'm bad at art, so I don't do it. But there are some people who are pretty good at art, and it's, make an icon. See how it looks, see how long it takes. If your taste is good enough, you'll be able to tell if it's a good icon or not. Figure out how long it takes, figure out how much money it would cost to have a freelancer do it, see how much money you got on hand, and then make the call. And it's just the sort of business skills that you're going to have to develop yourself.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi, good talk.
Thank you very much.
2 quick questions. You had mentioned how fans could kind of turn from love to hate pretty quickly. Is it possible to go the other way around?
Oh, sure. Life is long. Over a course of 25, 30, 50 years, it's like a fan will like me, and then they'll hate me, and then they'll live their life for 10 years and forget I exist, and rediscover me again and go,
Is it worth kind of like pursuing that particular moment to try to convert them back, or are you just kind of like break it there?
I'm trying to convert my old fans back all the time through a process that I call releasing a game. I write the best thing that I can and put out there. I'm certainly not focusing on individuals. And part of it, when I write so many games, I don't expect anyone to play all of my games because look at all this crap. Jesus Christ. I work on 2 different series at the same time that are very different. I have people who are fans of one series and hate the other series, and vice versa. Oh God, I had a really good point with that. No, I guess I didn't. I just make the things, and when I make a decision, I just ask what really works for this. And people are notoriously change-averse and risk-averse. If you change something, you're always going to lose people. But you got to change things or you're going to go crazy. So that's the game. You always got to make sure that when you change and you do a new thing, that thing you add is going to bring in fans to replace the ones you lost. Or hopefully increase the number.
Do you feel like the majority of your fan base existed before, like the Steam and indie bubble, or?
Oh yeah, well remember, I was doing this for a living. I started doing it for a living in 1995, and Steam only became a thing that indies were crazy about 16 years later. So I've been building fans forever. I made my own mailing list. If you can make your own mailing list, my God, that's a good mailing list. It's just a big red button that you hit it and $1,000 flies out. Make a fan base, cultivate your fan base. If at all possible, communicate with your fan base. I mainly do it by email, but I'll always answer an email. If someone cares about me that much, I'll always send their email back.
Cool, thank you.
You're welcome.
Hello.
Hi.
You mentioned about peaks and valleys throughout your career.
Sure.
When it's a valley, how do you keep the sort of emotional fortitude to keep going forward?
So the question is, when it's a valley, when things are going hard, how do you keep your emotions on an even keel? And what I tend to use is methamphetamine, which is, I'm in for it. Okay. Again, this is a very individual, very human, very person-to-person case. When I get terrified, I work harder. But I make sure to take time off. You're going to have hard times. You're going to have times when you're sad. You're going to have times when you're scared. You're going to have times when you're angry. You still need to eat. You need to sleep. You still need to maintain your relationships. And you just got to find your way to manage that. Like I said, I don't look at my forms. Only that my employees are forbidden to tell me how much money we're making. I never look at my sales. When I balance the checkbook every 3 months, then I know how much money we're making. Otherwise, I don't know, because if I find out, it's just going to stress me out. You figure out, you know your own brain, and I don't. Figure out the thing in your brain that enables you to deal with the terror, because you will always have some of the terror.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Maybe I'll suggest an SSRI over methamphetamine.
No half measures, man. I'm going out on top. Yes.
Hello. Thanks for the talk. I was wondering, if you were starting out today, would you use your own engine again, or would you choose some of the existing engines?
I'd probably make my own engine because I'm a total code. I enjoy programming enough and tech stuff enough, and this is an area that people argue about a lot, but I feel very passionately about. If at all possible, own the source code for your stuff. It has saved our butts so many times, and some people are thinking right now, I'm not a tech person. I'm a creator. I use an engine so I don't have to learn how to code, so my source code wouldn't do me any good. To which I respond that what you may have overlooked is that you don't need to know how to program. If you have the source code, you find some hungry kid out of college, you hand him a basket of our Earth dollars, and you say, here's my mess, make it work. And then they disappear, and they come back, and your engine works. They have money and something to put on a resume. You have a working machine that spits out dollars, and you both get on with your lives. But you can only do it if you have the source code. So that is much more than you asked, but it's definitely, I'd write my own engine because I think it's fun. My engines suck, but I like writing them. I'm sick of everything in my job, so if there's something I like doing, I grab onto it with both hands.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
So you mentioned that you release a game about one game a year.
Yeah, one and a half years.
A little bit about the decision, like, is that a really deliberate choice to do one a year, and how much of the personal deadline?
It works for me. I find that if I've been working on one game for about a year and a half, I either need to ship it or do a Hemingway. I just can't. I can't stand looking at it anymore. So I get it a year and a half. It's a full game. It's basically functional. I've made it 25% better. Made 25% of what was bad in the last one better. I kick it out and go on to the next thing. I like having a lot of different games, and I think it's fun. And since we only have a few seconds left, 2 final pieces of advice. Don't be proud of not getting enough sleep. You need sleep to live. And 2, get a chair that's good for your back, because when your back goes, my God, you're going to miss it. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Matthew. Hopefully this thing's working. Okay, good. So, you're not special, nor is your game, and you'll never ship a hit. That's the uncomfortable reality for most of us. And the sooner you can come to terms with that, the sooner you can start figuring out just how to survive as an indie. And of course, the longer you survive, the greater the chance that one day your game will be special and you will ship a hit. So I'm Jake Burkett, and I love making games. I love designing games, I love coding, and I love shipping games as well. So I went indie in 2005, and I've made a whole bunch of commercial games, most recently Regency Solitaire. I also love doing game jams and one game a month, and I've made a bunch of sort of free mini games. And I also co-founded Full Indie in Vancouver, which has got over 3,000 members. It's a pretty awesome meetup group. And I run the UK version. So if you're in the UK, look up fullindie.co.uk. So I'm a no-hit wonder. Plenty of talks are out there about hits, or maybe abject failures. And, there's the failure workshop down there. But there aren't many stories about people who survive for a long time, and I've survived for over a decade now. And that's what I'm going to talk about today. I've shipped over 10 games. All of them have sort of made some kind of profit, ranging from very poor to okay. And I've meticulously collected a lot of data, which I'm going to share with you today. I'm a firm believer that you should focus on your own games instead of working for other people, and I'm going to explain in detail why. I also think that having a long tail is extremely important, is vital to your success, and having a back catalogue is really powerful effect. Also, you need to be adaptable and determined. These are traits that you need to develop over time. I want to change your mindset from, I've made a hit game, so I want to make a hit game, to I want to build a sustainable business. Now, that's not as glamorous sounding, but I do believe it's more realistic. So the legendary Jeff Vogel, he said nobody knows anything. And there basically aren't any magic bullets. You hear about big hits and so on, but we've got this problem where if you only hear about the successful games, you're sort of ignoring all of the failures, and I don't think it's painting a realistic picture. One example is Indie Game the Movie. I like that movie a lot, but it sort of could lead you to believe that